landlubbers and desert dogs. Good morning, fellow treasure hunters and explorers. Today we're going to talk about pirates and pirate treasure and the extent to which it played a part in many countries all across the globe for many hundreds of years. Pirating goes all the way back to the long before the heyday of the pirates in the 1700s and the 1600s. That's when shipping and exploring the New World and many of the coasts really became profitable. But pirating has gone on for thousands of years. And if you look on Wikipedia and research the number of pirates and who they were over the years, there's actually 55 pages of information on different pirates going all the way back to, 3,000 years ago. And there's hardly a coastline anywhere in the world that was not at one time infested by pirates. And I think that pirate treasure probably remains one of the greatest potentials for a big haul by treasure hunters. Those of us that live inland in the deserts and the mountains and far enough away from the coast that it's annoying to go to the coast, we're at a great disadvantage. So for those of you that live close to the oceans, close to the areas, close to the trade routes that were once the areas that the pirates roamed, you have a great opportunity by doing some research and exploring some remote areas or areas that were remote and used by pirates during the day, the heyday of pirating, that none of the rest of us have. A lot of people have asked the question, did the pirates bury their treasure? Well, I think that goes without saying. Every group of people from all across the world buried their treasure long before they had secure homes and safes and vaults and banks and safety deposit boxes. People had to hide their treasure somewhere. Even people that owned homes buried their treasures in the yard or hid them somewhere in their house, under the floorboards in their walls. Pirate strongholds were locations that only pirates could access easily by ship or by boat. And pirates lived such violent and dangerous lives that any extra treasure that they accumulated was often cached. I believe it was often cached in the short term, and then once the coast cleared, they would go back and utilize the treasure or any excess that they had. Of course, a lot of pirate treasure was actually in the form of, rum or cloth, sugar, perhaps even slaves sometimes. They took whatever was on these ships that was profitable, and they had safe ports where they could go and sell their goods. They probably took a little bit of a cut because they were sold to people that were buying stolen goods, but it was profitable both for the pirates as well as for the people, the merchants that were buying these goods from the pirates. So a lot of people have argued that the pirates very seldom got gold or silver, but they were mostly trade goods. While this is true, if you consider that every ship that was crossing usually had passengers on there that had jewelry or gold or silver or their own money that they were carrying, the pirates almost certainly looted all these individuals of their treasure, and in addition to the trade goods. And it's my personal belief that the pirate captains, the head guy in charge, that he probably ended up mostly with the gold and the silver and all the precious things, and then he sold the goods that they took from those ships and distributed that money to his men. A whole group of pirates going to an island and burying treasure, I don't think that happened very often. I think it was more likely that the the captain, who was always smarter than everybody else or ahead of everybody else, that he accumulated a lot of wealth. And then while all his men were out partying and pillaging in town and getting drunk, he took his gold or silver or whatever he had and sailed off a little ways with a skeleton crew or in a little boat and hid his treasure. And at least that's what would seem to be that's what would seem to make sense. That's what most of the different pirate captains and stuff over the years that were captured, they always, in return for their freedom, tried to tell somebody where their treasure was hidden in exchange for their freedom. I think that there's a lot of buried treasure out there along the coasts of North America. We know that the Bahamas, the Caribbean, all along the eastern seaboard of America, back in the hidden cays and the bays, that there were a lot of places that the pirates could have hidden treasure. And I think that people that do their research and go into those areas with some deep-seeking detectors, some good metal detectors, have a good opportunity to find some of that lost and hidden treasure. Now, I'm going to identify some of the famous pirate strongholds. I'm going to let you do your own research on the specific locations, because there's millions and millions of acres and miles of coastline all around the world that pirates have frequented. And so I'm going to let you do your own research. Your own local research is going to be a lot better if you talk to the people in your area. There's going to be some legends, there's going to be some stories that have a little bit of truth to them. One of these places is Jamaica, Port Royal. Was a big place for pirates. It was offered up as a safe haven for pirates in exchange for protection from the Spanish. So the pirates protected the island from the Spanish. In return, they were given safe haven. The most famous state-sanctioned pirates from this area was Sir Henry Morgan, a Welsh captain who used Port Royal as a base for raids in the Spanish strongholds at Portobello, Cartagena, and Panama City. In 1660s, its streets were lined with taverns and brothels, eager to cater to the whims of any buccaneer flush with loot. Finally, I guess, by the 1720s, the town started to clean itself up, and Gallows Point became a notorious site for pirate hangings. Charles Vane and the flamboyant calico Jack Rackham would eventually meet their end in Port Royal. One of the most famous, probably made famous by the series Pirates of the Caribbean, is Tortuga. In the early 1600s, Tortuga served as a chief stronghold of a motley group of adventurers and escaped slaves who preyed on Spanish treasure ships in the Caribbean. Tortuga had a fortified stronghold built by Jean Vassier, a buccaneer leader who once worked as a military engineer, and he even built a 24-gun castle fort called Fort de Rocher to help guard the inland harbor. It became a prime destination for a harbor for pirates. As more pirates arrived on the island, they organized themselves into a loose fraternity called the Brethren of the Coast. And they developed a code that how they would deal with each other, how they would divide up treasure amongst themselves. The Tortuga was a thorn in the side of the Spanish, and so they responded with repeated attacks, and they finally subdued the area. And it says that they had all but disappeared by the beginning of the 1700s. Another important place to the pirates was St. Mary's Island. This was an area in the Indian Ocean. I guess this was an island of Madagascar. Okay, St. Mary's Island in the Indian Ocean. I guess the island of Madagascar was often a base of operations for raids on European and Asian shipping. According to a pirate legend, these pioneering pioneering thieves set up a utopian colony called Libertaria, where they mingled with native women and organized a democratic government. Madagascar had several other pirate strongholds, and principal among these was St. Mary's Island on the northeast coast. St. Mary's had about 1,500 people at one time, and it served as a supply base for pirates such as Captain Kidd, Thomas Tew, Henry Every. In 1695, Henry Every used a fleet to attack a treasure ship owned by one of the great Mongols of India, and following a bloody fight, he made off with the equivalent of $200 million in today's money. Another famous area of pirating was Clew Bay off the west coast of Ireland. 16th century, the rough shores of Clew Bay served as a stronghold for one of the most renowned lady pirates. Grace O'Malley emerged as a leader of a seafaring clan who controlled the coastline through intimidation and by plunder. Her base was at Rockfleet Castle. She commanded hundreds of men, around 20 ships, and they made raids on rival clans and merchant ships that ventured near their coast. O'Malley was captured in 1577 and spent several months behind bars. But by the 1580s, she was once again in Clew Bay. She was a ruthless fighter, and one legend says that she once gunned down a Turkish buccaneer only a day after giving birth. But she was successful because she had an understanding of politics and of men. Eventually the English captured her son and impounded her ships. O'Malley petitioned the crown for help and met with the Queen in 1593. She met with Queen Elizabeth I and personally negotiated her son's release and the return of her fleet. Another important pirate area was New Providence, and it became a popular place for cruise ships and vacationers. It sat in an optimal place for pirates between well-traveled trade areas between Europe and the West Indies. Nassau offered a harbor for pirates and marauders to repair and resupply before setting sail. New Providence, popular place for some of the roughest pirates of the Caribbean. Some of them, like Blackbeard, Charles Vane, and Stede Bonnet, were known to visit its bars, taverns, brothels, and the other areas the other places in that area. The Bahamas eventually became so overrun with pirates that the British government feared for the survival of its colony. In 1718, the king dispatched 3 warships to New Providence along with the new governor. The new governor offered a pardon to any pirate who surrendered, but he showed no mercy to those who resisted. After 1718, when he executed a band of pirates in Nassau, New Providence slowly transformed into a main headquarters for anti-piracy operations in the Caribbean. Barataria Bay is a swampy area surrounding Barataria Bay is in Louisiana. It once served for a safe haven for the famed pirate Jean Lafayette. In the early 1800s, Lafayette and his brother Pierre led a group of thieves who terrorized shipping in the Gulf of Mexico. They worked as privateers for the Republic of Cartagena. And they plundered Spanish merchant ships, smuggled stolen goods and slaves into New Orleans. In the 1810s, their illegal colony at Barteria Bay had grown into one of the busiest and most lucrative black market ports on all of North America. Over 1,000 marauders frequented the area, and more than a dozen pirate ships regularly came into its harbor. In 1814, Lafayette interrupted his piracy activities to play an unlikely role in the War of 1812. He received an offer from the British, who hoped to use him as a point to access New Orleans. Instead, Lafayette offered his services to the United States in exchange for clemency from his past pirating. They went on to serve, Lafayette and his pirates went on to serve with distinction in the Battle of New Orleans under future President Andrew Jackson, and he was awarded with a full pardon. But, as it often happens, he didn't stay away from crime for long. He later led his men to form another pirate haven on Galveston Island.
Fire! Fire!